what does it mean to live meaningfully? Where does one even start finding their meaning in life? These are very deep and philosophical questions. And in this episode, we're going to break it down for you guys. So, hi everyone. Welcome to Viet Boss Babes, a village podcast for modern Viet women around the world to listen, learn, and thrive in their daily lives. I'm your host, Mia Nguyen, and in this episode, I'm joined with Annie, or Lê Nyet An, a Gen Z singer-songwriter born and raised in Saigon. And she loves making music and inspires others to live to their fullest in their truest self. So over to you, Annie. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your story?
First thing first, I would like to thank you, Mia, for inviting me onto this really, really cool podcast. I'd love to see women celebrating women and just spreading our Vietnamese culture to see that we're really cool people and we're doing something out here.
Mm-hmm.
About me, well, I've always loved writing and just making music and just singing here and there. And so I thought it just makes sense when you put everything together. And I love to be creative as well as telling my stories. At some point, I realized I don't want to just sing other people's songs. I want to say something, I want to send a message. And in that process of exploring and creating, I get to find out more about myself, and hopefully it also inspire others to do the same.
How did you get into the creative career or pursuing singing and songwriting?
It's very interesting because I've always sang since primary school. I was in the school bands, I was going here and there for performance. I sang at like local coffee shops, things like that. But when I really took it seriously was during the pandemic, when I kind of lost my 9 to 5 job. And that I really devoted my heart and soul, and I really love my team. But at some point, I realized I should not attach my identity and my self-worth to an organization or just something outside of myself. And so I started to take my passion more seriously and decided, okay, this is the path that I want to go down. So that's how it started. Yeah.
And then how has it been going since you started?
It's been going. It's been up until this point 4 years. Like time flies like that, you know. I definitely feel like I'm nowhere yet. I feel like I'm just a newbie, beginner type situation. But I definitely feel that I've learned a lot about myself during the process, and that I've grown quite a bit in terms of my craftsmanship, but also in terms of performance and being a person that is more aware of themselves.
And I know we chatted a little bit about how you spent a little bit of time in Toronto. I remember seeing your shows in the Viet community in Toronto, and you hosted one for Tết, right? And then you hosted one for Christmas as well recently, which all look very successful. And then you moved back home recently. So tell us a bit about that. How was your experience like living in trying to build that career in Toronto and then coming back to Saigon? Yeah.
It's quite a challenge. I moved to Canada in 2017 to start school. And at that point, I barely knew anything. I didn't know I have to pay for utilities. That was a whole process.
Me too.
Yeah. Oh my God, so stressful.
It's a whole process.
I ran out of toilet paper and I'm like, it doesn't just restock. Like, oh my God, what a time. Yeah. And I was here for school, and that was cool. That was chill. That was like exploring the world. But then the moment where you have to actually step into the world and be like, okay, I'm no longer a student. What do I do? That was stressful. So when I graduated, I didn't have a job right away. I know a lot of my peers, they prepared for that transition like a year in advance or even two. Like they make sure they got their internship, they make sure they got everything in line for them to hop in right after they graduate. I didn't have that.
Mhm.
It was also
Mhm.
because I was midway through my career, like education career. I was here. I was back home in Vietnam
Mhm.
because of the pandemic.
Do
So,
COVID, yep.
yeah, so there was that like gap and mismatch. So
Yeah.
I didn't know that I would come back to Canada, but I ended up doing it because I wanted to finish school. I wanted to, finish what I started. But then, you know, at this point, it's my fourth time trying again, starting over again. So it comes with so much stress and
Yeah.
a lot of reinventing myself, which is a
Mm.
blessing in itself. It was very tough after graduating. I had a gap of not a full time job. I try to fill it in with other part times to make sure that bills are paid. But at the same time, I was like, okay, so how am I going to make this music thing work? I didn't
Mm.
even know how a song is created. Like, how do you even write a song, right? I didn't know beat was so expensive. I didn't know there was mix and mastering, and then there's publish, and then there's also like a million step after with distribution and publishing and like marketing. It's like,
That's a lot of, yeah, just like for one song, it takes a lot of heart and sweat.
yeah, and you don't even know if it's gonna come out good. Like you don't even know if anybody is gonna care for it. But
Mm.
all of that hard work and resources are being invested first thing, and you don't even know if you're gonna ever get that return back. So
Yeah.
yeah, that in itself is something that really, I don't know, it really makes me think about my choices more carefully. But it gives me more assurance that okay, this is what I'm willing to invest in. And
Mm.
in order for me to not just like figure things out on my own, I actually really push myself to be in the community. I don't know. I know that there's a lot in the Viet community that people are doing right now. A lot of events like Yes Feed and other places. Now we got NTP Music, who are they are making like live music shows every year. I think there's one coming up for the summer, but
Mm.
definitely for the falls. And I've been very active in those two in the organization process as well as performing. But also beside that, I also went to different conferences, music conferences that are like Canadian based. So
Mm.
not only are we in the Viet community, we're also in Toronto, right? We're in Canada. So I really want to bring that Viet identity, like inject that DNA into the scene, be like,
Yeah.
hey, we here, like, and we do this too, you know. But that in itself took quite a few steps in breaking that barrier for myself, at least.
Mm.
I think a lot of us who are here for school, language is a barrier sometimes, but also
Yeah.
it's the culture. Our culture, we are
Mhm.
so well, like elders are very well respected in that we do things when we're allowed to, you know. But once we're
Like
out of that,
asking for permission.
yeah, yeah, but that hold us back a lot. I remember my
Mm.
first time at that conference. It's called Beat Cave. My first time at that conference, what it is a bunch of artists, producer, engineers are put into a studio with 12 rooms, I think, 12 different studio
Mhm.
rooms, and things are just happening. People are just cooking, and you're allowed to just go in and just do your thing. And if you got something, you get to hop on the mic and lay something down, and then boom, you got something featured, which is really, really cool. It basically cleared the what is it, entry barrier for,
Barrier of entry.
yeah,
Yeah.
for new artists, or just
Yeah.
basically like creatives. And I remember being at the back of the room just watching everybody and cannot for the love of my life get my guts up to go up to the mic. And by the end of
Yeah.
the day, I was there for like over 12 hours, like 14 hours straight. And I was like, I have to hop on at least one song. Bro,
So it's 14 hours and you haven't hopped on for a song. Okay.
it was like literally like everybody is moving, and I was just like, "Mm." I tried. I write too, and I didn't know how to write a song, right? So being able to
Mm,
see so many people do it in so many different ways. There are people who just listen to the music and they hop on the mic and they freestyle, and it's just like blah, 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 and they got everything down. But others, some write, some be like, oh, test it out. And I learned a lot from that process, but I learned most
mhm.
from being courageous and kicking myself in the ass to like, do something, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then speaking of that theme, how do we balance between our the values and the family values that we were brought up, asking for permissions, being the quote unquote good kid, right? Like you consider as one when you follow the rules and balancing between that and finding your own meaning in life or your own identity. It's a conflict, right? You're asking for permissions, you're seeking for approval, but also you're trying to build something for yourself. And sometimes that means pursuing quote unquote unconventional path.
That was a really intense internal conflict that I had to go through
Yeah.
personally. Because like you always
Yeah.
you always want to perform, you
Yeah.
always want to. That's also the reason why I came back the second time to Canada,
Mm,
because I wanted to accomplish and fulfill my duties with my parents.
mm,
You know, I want to be able to tell them I finished school with a certificate. Here's your paper, and
yeah.
I'm here. I got that at least 1 year of work experience before I actually get to really do what I want to do. Obviously, I do it
Mhm.
like you know, like at night where other things needs to be done. But yeah, that it's a battle. It's a battle.
I love the word you use, like dutiful, like dutiful. Like I think that is a beautiful values that we as Vietnamese have. Like culturally, I think is something that I'm very proud to embrace, like being a dutiful daughter or a sister, or because that's how you build a strong community, right? Like you give and you know that you will receive.
Mhm.
And it's a thin line between just being obedient and then being dutiful. And I remember when I first started my podcast too, I think I had this idea for a few years now, but I in my back of my mind I'm like, no, like I need to get my green card, I need to get a full-time job, I need to be able to pay the bills on my own, like being independent. I need to prove to my parents that I'm grown up before I pursue something. It's almost like a pride at this point. I'm like, no, I have to prove like I'm an adult, and then I can go and do my thing. And I don't know if that's the right path, but I know that's the path that is worked for you, it's worked for me, right? Making that compromise of, okay, if your parents have certain expectations, graduating schools, getting the first full-time job. I'm like, okay, I'll do it for you
Mm.
just so I can get that like off that check box.
Yeah.
But then once that is fulfilled, then you can start exploring that meaning in life. What does that actually mean for you to be you?
Mm.
And it's a constant negotiation with your parents or with yourself too, because you know that certain paths are unconventional, it's risky, but like that this is your calling, and then you're just gonna have to like
Mm.
just zone in and just go for it. Otherwise, you will never know if it's for you or not, and you might resent yourself if you never start.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It definitely takes a lot of time in compromising. Like I have that
yeah,
peer pressure of people succeeding in this career, like the one in the million, but that still gives you that stress of, okay, what have you been doing these past few years? Whereas people who
Yeah.
are your age or even younger are like on those stage that you dream to be on, you know?
Yeah.
And like you weren't even in the country. Sometimes I have to like, it's okay. you know? I think the
Yeah.
best thing about our culture though, like having that Asian community base, very loving, very caring, being together vibes comes with its
Mhm.
own like eyes and ears, you know?
Yeah.
So that you also have to
Yeah.
be conscious of other people and their wants and needs. And obviously you fulfill your own, but then you also have to be conscious. You don't have to
Mhm.
fulfill their wishes, but you have to be conscious. And so in
Yeah.
the process of considering and deciding where you want to go with your life, there's a lot going on. If you,
Yeah.
yeah, I think being in Canada, I really miss being home because of
Mm.
the individualistic nature of a Western country. I really, at this point, I think I really embodied that essence of embracing your own individuality, but also
Mm.
come home to my culture of being nurturing and like community based and like being there
Yeah.
for other people when they need it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Cause like
Yeah.
I really struggle being there because I'm there alone. I don't got no family.
Mm.
I really
Mhm.
built my whole life over there. Try to get out there, try to push myself, and I think that with its own struggle is a blessing because I get to be my own person and become my own person. Yeah, and really push through those like being shy, being permitted,
Yeah.
being like, oh, can I?
I find that it's our our generation, but our generation does have it in does experience get to experience a lot of these, right? We go study abroad or like, even just living on your own builds up that individuality, and it's a very new concept for Vietnam to be an individual, like individualism. But I also love that we're constantly balancing between that individualistic culture, but also like our community, right? Making sure we're coming home and making sure we're taking care of like our safety net and our community. I also came to Canada on my own and you really feel so lonely. And there were times when, at school I was really struggling and I could be at home for a whole 2 weeks and no one would know. Like everyone is taking care of their own things, like doing their own things. And yeah, like if you're lucky, you might have like one that two friends who like check in on you, but otherwise it's like your parents won't know, they're far away and no one cares. Yeah.
Basically.
The other thing is on this theme on that's theme number one on how to build a meaningful life is how do you even start? Do you start with a vision board? Do you have a to-do list? Renew your resolutions? What kind of tools do you use to kind of map out this is what the vision that I have for myself?
I'll just do a quick jump cut for you for the previous question, but I'll get to this real.
Yeah.
I just want to touch on my experience when I went to the casting.
Mm.
Did you know 5,000 people signed up for casting?
For Raviet.
Yeah,
For Raviet.
and
Yeah.
they were supposed to spread it out in 4 days, and obviously
Mm.
they can't listen to 5,000 people rap, right? So they only have
Mm.
2, 3,000, I think, max, four max.
Mm.
But then
Mm.
when I was there, I had 200 people in front of me, and I sat
Wow.
for 12 hours, like in lines and also like in the room and listening to the casting people. And I realized
Mm-hmm.
I started to see a thread. I started to see a trend where people who never really left their nest will
Mm.
always be sheltered some way, somehow.
Mm.
No matter how far, how old they've gone, become, and like have their own career and whatnot, they will always have that sense of being home, being having that safety net that they can always fall back on. And you can see the
Yeah.
difference between the people who really had to be thrown out there, figure themselves out. Like
Yeah.
their sense of individuality is so much more polished.
Mm.
So I think through the challenges, it's the challenges, and it's also that the putting yourself out there and actively, consciously learning about your tendencies and even your trauma, getting through those, but also your core values and how you build yourself after facing different situations. And like you get to
Mm.
decide who you want to be and not who you are told to be. So
Mhm.
I think that was a really empowering lesson that I learned from that process.
Mhm.
I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
To your
Yeah.
question,
The struggle was worth it. Yeah, the struggle was worth it, right?
I
You're like, you
know,
go through it and you're like, "Do I really have to pay these utility bills on my own?"
so
And it's worth it.
now I know why mom tell me to turn off the light when I don't use it.
Yeah. You really feel it.
You become
Yeah.
your mom, like in an instant. To how do I decide who I want to become? I'll show you.
Mhm.
Actually,
Yeah, show me.
I will show you because I took these down for a second. Since you mentioned vision board, I have a bunch.
Wow.
I
That
am
is
that
so cool.
spiritual person. Okay.
She
Well,
is a vision boarding girly.
I know people
Okay, walk.
who vision board and like everything come true. I don't know. For myself, it's more the vibes. It's more the waking up and not feeling it that day. I'll try another day kind of vibes. So
Yeah.
I made quite a few. This is the most recent one that I made, and
Yeah.
this
Wow.
I think this is my first one.
Yeah.
And I first made this
Yeah.
probably during the
I see Hong Ok Ha on there.
yeah, I like her. She iconic to me.
She's great.
She's
Iconic. Yeah,
through
what a
ups and
queen.
downs, she sustained. Yeah. So I had a lot of body positivity issue back in the day.
Mm.
So I worked really hard in terms of fitness. So I have a bunch of
Mm.
fitness stuff that keep me going. Oh, I graduated. Oh, this came true. This paper.
You she did graduate.
Because I
Check off the vision board.
check it off because I didn't think that I would make it because of everything that changed during that situation. Yeah, I have my face on like billboards and like game shows and like magazines.
Yeah.
Up until this point, that hasn't happened yet, but I think I got my fitness stuff down. I graduated.
Mm.
I also had hosted several shows. So this was my very first. And this is
Wow.
the most recent one. This is more for the vibes, you know? Obviously,
Mm.
you can see it's more celebrity vibes now because that's what I'm trying to.
Yeah. Yeah. Now that you graduated,
Now that
you're like, now I can focus on myself.
I focus
Yeah.
myself. Yeah. Yeah. It's like vision board because I'm a visual creature,
Mm.
but I think the process, it's the process when you create that vision board is where you really try to decide how are you, where are you going to drive?
Mm.
Yeah. Like, how are you
Yeah.
going to carve your path? And don't attach your values and yourself to those imageries, but have a
Mm.
vision, visualize. Okay, that's who I want to become. That's kind of where I want to be. Like place those pins on the map, and then
Mhm.
however you maneuver through the world, some way somehow you'll get to.
Yeah.
But then now you know
Yeah.
where to go next. So you just
For sure. So, yeah, I think to the audience, if you are a visual learner, check our YouTube and see Annie's full vision board. That was so cool to see. I was like, "Oh, you have you vision board? I have 3."
I have a bunch. It's so good.
Yeah.
Them. It's so
Yeah. That's really cool. So we pretty much covered a lot of things. Oh, let's talk about like imposter syndrome. I know you mentioned that a lot, especially in performative arts. I could just kind of imagine like a lot of us layman like we don't go on stage as a profession, and even then we can feel the imposter syndrome, especially for women. But for you, I'm like, that's another level of imposter syndrome that you overcome. How?
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I
Yeah.
feel that every day. I mean, even Billie Eilish got it, bro. She's like the biggest
Yeah.
on the planet. But
Yeah.
basically, it's like that, like doubts and the scariness of not knowing if you're it. You know,
Yeah.
I think everybody goes through that to a certain degree. And being an artist,
Mm,
you have to be so vulnerable. Being a
mm,
songwriter, you write from your head, you write from your heart, you know? So like for people to hear it and then for you to perform it and for you to stand on that stage and be like, I deserve your attention. I'm
yeah.
doing good enough for you to appreciate
Mm,
or for you to actually care about what I do, you know?
mm,
It's a lot and it's a lot of self-judgment. And I remember sitting on that balcony in my downtown apartment and I looked outside and I'd be like, I can't even meet my own expectation. So who am I to expect other to meet my expectation, you know?
mm,
And then you start to be less hard on yourself after you realize that because it's simply unrealistic, you know. And at some point when you realize we're all learning and we're all evolving, and that is the journey, you know, that is the
mm,
process of becoming and evolving and become the greater version of yourself. But
yeah.
accepting the fact that you are a student of life, give yourself a bit of ease. Be like, okay, I'm not perfect
Yeah.
here, but that's okay. I will become better next time. But I am who
Yeah.
I am right now, and I accept and I
Mm.
appreciate I am for who I am.
That's super empowering. I remember recently Anne Hathaway, she came back to acting and
Mhm.
pursuing her career. And I think at the age of 40, 41 or something, and she's beautiful. And I remember like in one of her interviews, she was saying how she was like so insecure in her 20s, like she just doesn't know how to figure it out. And but what really resonates with me was like, yeah, that's what life is for, right? Like you're constantly figuring out yourself. But that's the whole point of life. Like it's not about, oh, I figured it out. Now let me live 30 years of the rest of my life with this figured out. It's like constantly learning new things about yourself, and then also letting go of things when they're no longer aligned with your truth. Yeah.
Sometimes I wish that process kind of paused a little. You know what I'm saying? Because it's so
Yeah.
tiring. Sometimes I
It's constantly
like hold off on that personal
yeah.
development. Let me just chill.
Yeah.
Let me just be reckless for a second.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like I really resonate with what you said that you are coming into alignment with yourself because
Mhm.
you are not who you are even a year ago. That you're probably
Yeah.
very different. You're probably in a very different place.
Very different.
So if you stay the way you are, like 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, you're probably like not really aligned with who you truly are. And
Mhm. You're holding on too tight. Yeah.
exactly. And maybe that in itself makes you lose sight of a lot of things that could have come to
Yeah.
you if you open your heart a little more.
Yeah. I also think that life just has its way to throw you with challenges. If you're just sitting here and holding on to things, life is all right.
Yeah,
Let's
like
push her
shake.
off the cliff. She needs to jump. Yeah, shake it up, you know? I do believe that like in the universe, they also have its way of working that is beyond your control. And at some point, if you keep holding on, it's gonna hurt you more than help you. Yeah, so I think that is the wrap for our interview today. But before we do wrap up, I have a little bit of Vietnamese outro. So we're gonna đổi mode. Yeah, it's just for a little bit of our Vietnamese audience. And if you are listening to this episode on Spotify, please check out our YouTube for the English Vietnamese translation. So trước khi chúng mình kết lại hôm nay thì chúng mình sẽ đến với màn thả phanh. So basically what it means is Mia sẽ đặt 3 câu hỏi chớp nhoáng và Annie sẽ phải trả lời không được chần chừ, không được lưỡng lự nhá. Yeah, are you ready? Sẵn sàng chưa? Annie sẵn sàng chưa?
Trả lời tiếng Việt đúng không?
Trả lời tiếng Việt.
Tiếng Nam, tiếng Bắc.
Okay.
Ok, mình nói
tiếng gì cũng được miễn là tiếng Việt.
tiếng
Miễn là tiếng Việt. So câu hỏi thứ nhất là nếu phải chọn một món Việt Nam để ăn đến cuối đời thì Annie sẽ chọn món gì? Hơi khó.
Ăn tới cuối đời thì ngán chết luôn á. Ăn cơm tấm đi. Ăn cơm tấm kiểu
Ăn cơm tấm.
Cơm tấm có cơm tấm sườn bì chả, kiểu mỗi hôm mà chán cái nào thì ăn với mỗi cái đó thôi, xong rồi chán mắm.
Cái đó.
Được.
Yeah, good tactic. Câu hỏi số 2 là nguồn cảm hứng cho những bài hát của Annie đến từ đâu?
Từ cuộc sống và từ trải nghiệm và từ những bài học mình đang học.
Okay. And then câu hỏi cuối cùng là slogan trong cuộc sống của Annie hiện tại là gì?
Slogan? Trời ơi, dạo nói không hay cười đó. Cứ sống đi. Cứ sống đi. Mà tại sao lại như vậy? Mình ăn gian một chút xíu nha. Tại vì có một lúc mà có những ngày mình thức dậy mình không biết tại sao mình thức dậy để làm gì. Mình cũng không biết lý do để mình tiếp tục để làm gì. Và mình không hiểu cái ý nghĩa của cái việc mình sống để làm. Trưng cho xong nghỉ chơi exit. Nhưng mà mình struggle kiểu như mình tìm xong rồi nhiều người ta đi tìm ý nghĩa của cuộc sống á, nhưng mà thật ra ở tiếng Anh đó là life á, what's the meaning of life? Nhưng thực sự thì nó đơn giản thôi, the meaning of life is to live. Ý nghĩa của cuộc sống là để mình sống, để mình trải nghiệm, để mình học hỏi và để mình thực sự có những cái trải nghiệm sâu sắc nhất, vui có, buồn có, cả mọi thứ xung quanh everything. Nhưng mà sau đó mình đúc kết lại được cái gì đó cho mình thì cái đó là cái phong phú của cuộc sống mình.
Wow, knowledge bomb. Okay, so that is a wrap for our episode for today. Thank you so much for your time, Annie, for joining us. And how can the audience support your career?
Yeah, you can check me out on social media at ANNIELEKA and Spotify ANNIELEKA. There's gonna be a lot of products dropping this year. I've been working really hard, so I hope y'all love it. YouTube also.
Okay, stay tuned and stay tuned, everyone. So, to the audience, if you like this episode, please support Viet Boss Babes by following us on Instagram or YouTube. And if you have any ideas, comments, please also DM us. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. I'll see you soon.